Behold the purge of my reign to come! But first, let us begin the ancient ritual for the king of the Netherworld. We will duel on the crest of the Condor. There I will crush you silent and send you all to the Netherworld. In turn, he will do my bidding and my ultimate plan will at last be set in motion.
Rex Goodwin, my favorite character in Yu-Gi-Oh! 5Ds, with one of the most interesting deck concepts that I've been trying to make work for almost a year. Finally got support in July of 2024 without much fanfare. Konami released the mini-box Ray of Aura and 3 new skills, Shark Magic Combo, Hope-Filled Chronomaly, and the subject of this video, Swallowed by the Netherworld. Now, if you've seen some of the replays I've posted on this channel before, you would think I'd be excited for this new content. And you'd be right, since once the skill came out, this was the screen I saw for the next 2 months. After that, however, my drive to play the deck dramatically dropped off, and I just went back to Lavals and the Winged Dragon of Ra. Though, I do want to mention that I didn't see any Rex Goodwins after the Turbo Duel Grand Prix, and even during the September KC Cup of 2024, which got me wondering. How could I lose interest in something I've been working on for the better part of a year and a half in the span of 2 months? How did this skill fall under the radar when it was released alongside 2 other inferior skills? Obviously not biased. Well, I'm gonna dive into it, starting with the skill and giving my opinions of this deck before and after the release of this skill. So pretty much the first part of the skill is a summoning restriction, locking you to only tuners, spellcasters, Earthbound Greater Linewalker, and Earthbound Immortal Rear-Encroacher Raska, and an effect restriction on Raska, stopping it from activating on the first turn of the duel, which is fine, since honestly dealing with a turn 1 hand rip isn't fun. Isn't that right, Yudo and Dumon? Anyways, the first skill activation sets up your graveyard with both Sun Dragon Inti and Moon Dragon Quia, your deck with 2 Supeis and Firing Ascators, and fixes your hand to pretty much add one of these cards to your hand and the field spell Earthbound Geoglyph, pretty much reducing your chances of bricking to like 5%. Finally, the third activation allows you to increase your Earthbound Immortals attack to 3,000. It goes to say that this is a welcome change to the 8 Inca players out there, and this is a side-by-side comparison of a build before and after the skill's release. In the first version, the idea was to get Sun and Moon Dragon out as quickly and efficiently as possible, then using Bishbalkin as the boss monster, while saving Raska as an alternate win condition. Whether it was using its effect to give my deck just enough cards to prevent a deck out if the opponent was playing a stall deck, or just attacking directly for 3,000 that they hopefully couldn't stop, while getting a second use of the continuous traps and starting the Sun and Moon Dragon loop if they were summoned with the trap. In the second one, however, it's more about just setting up an effect floodgate and then using reborn traps to keep the Sun and Moon loop going, and ideally using Raska to OTK the opponent. The first obvious change is that they gave Raska a well-welcomed attack boost using the skill, yet balanced it to only once per duel, which is honestly fine in my book. You would not believe how often I would draw this thing, only for it to sit in my hand since I usually didn't have the resources to summon it. Whether it be tributes or the field spell, it doesn't matter. But then you also need to bounce 3 cards to get it up to 3,000, which in turn would also force the opponent to discard 3 cards. Now, if you manage to pull that off, congratulations! With any luck, you most likely end up making them discard something they could actually use, like a White Stone of Ancients that will allow them to summon Dragon Spirit of White, to then banish your field spell, effectively making your entire play meaningless and leaving you wide open to a guy who won't stop comboing even though you have no hand or field. It goes without saying that this has happened to me more times than I would like to admit. Another thing to note is that, since the skill stopped Raska's effect from activating on the first turn, you can get it out without having to worry about bouncing any cards, since if the only other target was the field spell, Raska would be forced to bounce the field spell, then kill itself. Though that doesn't really matter since the skill also gave us a free Earthbound Geoglyph to use, which is great since even if you didn't have any other targets for Raska's effect, the Geoglyph can't be targeted because Raska's level 10, so Raska's effect will just fizzle. Plus that also means that you don't have to run a field spell in your main deck, which is one of the main things holding the Earthbound Immortals back. The second big change is that you are no longer required to synchro summon Sun and Moon Dragon yourself. Now, I will admit, I really liked having to summon them myself since that led to more interesting deck builds and learning how to get both Sun and Moon Dragon and sometimes even Bishbalkin out in that same turn with the right hand. Then, whenever the time was right, you can use Bishbalkin's effect to fill the field with tokens, which would not only boost its attack, it also cause effects like Monster Reborn to fizzle, and it gives you free tributes for Raska. However, because of the summoning restrictions of the skill and the unfortunate banning of Bishbalkin, you couldn't even activate its effect to summon the tokens anyways. Speaking of summoning restrictions, that also meant that most of the monsters I used in my old builds couldn't be used, which is kind of a shame since I liked using stuff like Nefarious Archfiend Eater of Nefariousness to destroy one of the dragons to summon the other one on my turn, and it also added an extra body the opponent had to get through while giving me an extra resource to use on Raska. Plus, since it was a level 4, I could also use it to go into a Samsara Dragon of Rebirth with a Supé or something, which is a good card in a deck like this, but since these are fair prices to pay for consistency, I won't harp too much more on it. The deck before was okay, but pretty slow and bricky at certain points since Raska and the field spell could just be dead cards sitting in your hand. Not to mention that, unless you got a Supé and Fire Ant Ascator, you weren't going into Sun or Moon Dragon for a while, so you had to stall for a bit using Bishbalkin, Ascension Sky Dragon, or a different level 6 to 8 monster that might keep you alive long enough to get to that point. To wrap this up, I think the main thing that let this skill be released without fanfare is that no one really cares much about Earthbound Immortals or the Inca archetype, but this skill fixed most of the problems with Raska, since most Earthbound Immortal support is just bad, and getting Sun and Moon Dragon out could be very tedious. Plus, the resource commitment meant that you were sort of forced to put everything else on the back burner till you got Sun and Moon Dragon out. But, thanks to this new-ish skill, new-ish life was put into the deck, meaning you could play it just like Rex did in the show. Steroids and all. Anyways, I just wanted to make this video to give some appreciation to some underutilized skills. Like I mentioned in my Immortal Sun God video, this is exactly how I expected skills to be made for the next few years, and hopefully, we will get another Earthbound Immortal skill that supports an archetype that needs it the most. But, we will save that for a future video.